Hello guys, welcome to Proxima What Ifs. So in this video, we will see, what if Izuku got reborn in Black Clover with 7 legendary Clover Grimore? If you enjoy these kinds of stories, don't forget to show us some love by hitting the like button and subscribing to the channel. Your support means the world to us. Now, let's start the story. Chapter 1. Green Comet, Black Bulls. The world yanks sideways and hands me a problem. A wagon hangs off a broken mountain road, rear axle seesawing over a ravine, a family screaming inside. No time to think. Boots hit gravel, I sprint. The left wheel skids, wood shrieks, the cliff takes another bite. Move. I duck under the tipping frame and shove my shoulder into the wagon belly. Bone deep weight. My shoes slide. Pebbles skitter into the gorge. A kid inside sobs, "Mama, I've got you." My legs shake. The road wants to pour us into the sky. Something circles me. 7 books, their covers clamped shut, orbiting like impatient moons. They've been there since I woke in this world, heavy and silent. None ever opened. The wagon dips anyway. Not today. I pant, then do what I always do when fear hums, step forward. Pressure spills through my chest and out across my skin. One book snaps. Gold leaf trim flashes. A hard, translucent guard shells out from my forearms and ribs, hex-edged and warm. The world's cleanest body check turned into a portable wall. The wagon drops onto the shield. My knees buckle. I dig my feet into grit and push. Out. I bark to the father frozen at the door. Take the kids first. Jump to the road. I'll hold. He blinks, then moves. The mother tosses a toddler. I twist so the shield curves like a slide, redirecting fall into the road. They tumble, alive, limbs and noise everywhere. I exhale. The wagon is still a beast. The cliff still chews. The shield groans like glass about to cry. I brace for the last lift and ram my shoulder up. The axle clears the edge. The whole thing slams onto solid ground. The guard flickers and pops like a soap bubble. My shoulder throbs. I grin so hard it hurts. "Why you saved us," the father says, halfway between a laugh and a sob. Team effort. I wave off the thanks, because there's a new feeling behind my sternum, like a locked door clicked open. The book that opened drifts closer, cover stamped with a single clover leaf. The pages whisper around my hands. Boots crunch behind me. Cigarettes talk before their owner does. "You held up a wagon with your shoulder," a deadpan voice says. "And then you made a new kind of wall with zero training." A man with spiky hair and the patience of a bored tiger stares at me. He's got a katana and captain vibes without trying. "You're weird." I look at the 7 books, then at him, then back at the family. "I'll take it." Name's Yami, captain of the Black Bulls. He squints. "You got a name, weird kid." "Izuku." He jerks his chin at my orbiting mess. "Those yours?" "Apparently." I scratch my neck. "One opened when I did the right thing, so I guess they're going to be a handful." "Good. We specialize in chaos." He glances at the saved family and gives them a casual nod, half blessing. Half. Don't make me say it twice. Then he points at me. "Tryouts are today. Come break some expectations." I check the road, the family, the cliff, the gold-stitched book humming near my palm. Somewhere deep below, the ravine breathes. Adrenaline buzzes. I roll my shoulder until the ache fades to background music. Lead the way. The capital is loud, bright, and bored with itself. Market stalls shout. Pennants flap. The selection arena drinks people like a storm drain. Kids with fresh cloaks flex. Noble brats whisper. Commoners stare at the seats where squads sit in a messy rainbow. The Black Bulls section is a party inside a mess. Dice rolling. Someone arguing with a sheep. A tiny girl eating a loaf the size of her head. A silver-haired girl sits there too, annoyed at the world and at herself in equal parts. Yami slaps my back hard enough to knock my lungs into next week. "Make a scene," he says. "But not, like, a crime. Define scene. You'll know when you see their faces." I step onto the trial floor. The raw stone hums with magic. Judges murmur. A guy in a gold trim coat, back straight, eyes sharp, watches me like I tracked mud onto holy ground. He doesn't say anything. He doesn't have to. The coat says Golden Dawn. The announcer blows a horn the size of my torso. "Applicants, demonstrate your magic." People show off. Fire pillars. Flower fields. Someone launches a fog of bees, which is honestly a war crime. The crowd says ooh in the right places. My 7 books keep orbit, quiet as a dare. I walk to the center and take a breath. No speeches. No legacy. No pedigree. I think of a wagon and a cliff and a kid who thinks he's about to fall forever. My shoulders square. The first book lifts off my orbit, cover flare bright, and the guard snaps to life again, clean. Curved. Responsive. It's not a wall. It's a promise. I build it around me, then compress it down to my fists, then expand it again, shaping it. A ramp, a dome, a wedge. The crowd leans in. I step and the guard steps with me, light sliding across stone. Someone in the bulls section whistles. Do it again. I do it again, only faster. Guard, recoil, step, shove, catch. The pattern settles like a combo I didn't know I had. My breath sets the tempo. The arena stones get a thin ring pattern around my feet like a halo tattoo. The guy in the gold coat stands. He's tall, proud, and efficient. Sun symbols are stitched into his cuffs, lines radiating out. He jumps down into the arena. I'll test him. His voice is sunlight that's had enough of clouds. Leoric Kira. Golden Dawn. The bulls hoot. Yami chuckles. The silver-haired girl leans forward, eyes sharp. The announcer stumbles through a, "Yes please don't sue us," and waves us into a ring carved by magic. Leoric faces me like a polite blade. You handled a wagon. Try handling me. I like you, I say, and mean it. He's annoying already, but in the way a good puzzle is. Let's go. He raises a hand. Lines spark. Sunline magic slices into the floor without touching it, ropes of hard light that hum at a frequency I feel in my teeth. They crisscross toward me like a net. I don't backpedal. I step into them. The guard blossoms. Not a dome this time, but a thin shield riding the exact angle of the line, like a surfboard for a laser. The first line skates off me. I pivot so the second hits oblique, the third I wedge and shove. And it rebounds into the fourth with a high ping, out of his lane. I keep moving. There's no safe zone, so I make one, stride by stride. Leoric narrows one eye. He changes tempo. The lines knot into corkscrews, then flatten into planes, then whip like whips. The crowd roars. The bulls cheer every near miss like children at a fireworks show. The Golden Dawn claps, precise and prim. Predictable, Leoric says. He cuts a line straight for my ankle. I hop, plant my guard underfoot like a springboard, and skip to his side. Rude. My elbow kisses his ribs through a compressed shield. He grunts. Not used to anyone touching him in a trial. I don't chase. I give him respect and distance in the same breath. That guard is not a toy, he says. I know. I smile. It's a hammer. His mouth quirks. He's having fun and he hates that he is. He feeds power. The lines cohere into a lattice and drop like a cage. I slam the guard into the ground and make it breathe, a heartbeat pulse that ripples out. The lattice hits it and loses cohesion for a blink, just long enough for me to dash through the opening and shoulder Leoric off balance. We spin. My palm touches his chest. The guard flashes, not to break anything, just to say I could. He lands, skids, catches himself, and laughs once. Fine. He lifts both hands. Light sings. The sun rises inside the arena and a blade grows out of the air. I blink the afterimage out of my eyes and roll my neck. Now we're cooking. We trade without killing each other. It's the best kind of fight. Clean, fast, honest. Every time he builds a perfect geometry, I find the seam and slide through. Every time I think I've got his rhythm, he changes the song. The crowd goes from curious to loud. My guard gets leaner, tighter. His lines get meaner, smarter. I catch his blade on a small, tough curve of shield and twist, nudging it 3 degrees off ideal. We both feel it, the way that tiny angle changes everything. He poo. LLS back before either of us does something we can't take back. We step out of each other's space. Enough, he says, breathing hard but unruffled. He offers me a salute. If you were a Dawn, I'd trust you with a flank. I offer my hand instead of a salute. We can still cover each other's flanks. He looks at the hand, then past me, at the bulls all on their feet chaos. His jaw sets. He doesn't take it, earn it, working on it. He leaves the arena with a captain's nod to his own people. Golden Dawn whisper about me like I'm a rumor that got loud. The bulls don't whisper, they swarm. The tiny girl with the giant loaf shoves bread into my hands. Eat, you move like a hungry person. Thanks, I say around a mouthful as Yami claps once. So you made a scene without a crime. He jerks his chin at the bull's banner flap. You're ours, kid. My 7 books hum around me, subdued and watchful. 1 is open, 6 are locked like judgments I haven't earned. The bull's base is a brick with a personality. Doors lead to other doors which lead to a bar which leads to a pig. That's Henry, someone says as the pig oinks like a theologian. Everyone acts like the chaos is normal because it is. New guy. Magna swaggers up like an older brother who skipped class to teach life lessons. You and me, catch. He throws a fireball like it's a baseball. Luck zips past, trying to intercept, cackling. I angle my shoulder and let the guard bloom just enough to let the fireball kiss it and spin off into the training pit, where it detonates with a cheer. Luck skids to a stop, eyes lit. This is going to be fun. He says. Don't blow him up on day 1, Vanessa says from a hammock that may actually be magic or very committed string. We just got him. Ghosh glances over at his sister's picture and then at me like I'm a complication in math. Whatever as long as you don't mess with Marie. Understood, I say, because the vibe is clear. Family first, weird second. Noelle sits at a distance, chin up. Silver hair perfect despite the humidity of whatever is going on near the kitchen. Charmy eats something new that smells like cloud cake. Gordon tries to welcome me. I whisper that sounds like a secret spell. I nod, because he's sweet and terrifying. Yami points me at a hallway. Noelle, babysit him. She bristles. I don't babysit. Great, Yami says. Then don't. Make him useful. She stalks off. I follow, still chewing bread because Charmy has physics breaking timing with snacks. The training yard we step into is a rectangle with cracks like veins. Noelle stands at one end, arms crossed. You looked ridiculous out there, she says. In a good way. Don't let it go to your head. That was the plan, I say. Would you like to practice? I can take hits. Her eyebrow lifts. Everyone says that. Then let me prove it. We set up a simple drill. She calls water up, clean and cutting. I set my guard and move to keep her line clear. No commentary. No correcting. The rhythm finds itself. She throws wide. I guide a push to narrow it and keep the splash from the walkway where someone just hung laundry. She notes the angle without glaring. On the 5th volley, I step into her shot and let the guard take the center while I plant my feet to give her a better line. She notices. Her mouth moves like she's about to comment, but she swallows it and throws harder. Again, she says, yes ma'am. We're both breathing hard and stupidly wired when a white cloak drifts into the yard. He has healer hands and a face built for trust. 2 villagers follow, one clutching a bandaged arm, one ashamed of needing help. Noelle drops her stance fast. I let my guard fade. Apologies for the intrusion, the man says, voice gentle. The city's healer hall is full. We serve those who slip through the cracks. I ask. Our order has a simple mission. He touches the injured man's arm without a flinch. White light soothes the angry red. The man sighs, pain peeled to quiet. Then the healer draws a simple circle in the air and presses it softly against the man's neck. The ink sinks without ink. A sigil. It looks like a blessing cut into geometry. What's that? Noelle asks, suspicious and polite in the Vermilion way. A sign of care, the healer says, smiling. A reminder that he is never alone. The man looks relieved and spooked at the same time. His wife thanks the healer with tears in her voice. They leave, holding each other tighter than they did on entry. Noelle folds her arms. A reminder or a leash. The healer doesn't flinch. A world without fear is worth small rules, Lady Silva. You'll see. He looks at me. I look back. For one sharp second, I feel the pressure behind his kindness, the quiet intent of a hand that wants to tuck your hair behind your ear and tell you you never have to make hard choices again. It's tempting in the worst way. Peace without choice, I say. That's not peace. He smiles like I told a charming joke. The 7th hymn will help you understand when it's finished. He drifts out as if he hadn't told us anything at all. Noelle exhales a curse under her breath that would make her maid faint. I hate that I almost agreed. Same. I flex my hands until the need to fix it now bleeds off. We'll keep our eyes open. We don't get to keep them open for long. Yami's voice booms down the hall. Field trip, kiddies. We're going upstairs to say hi to the Wizard King. Julius's office is stacked with books and smiles. He's either a genius or he's been faking it so well it became real. He gives me the once-over. All friendly, then studies the 7 grimoires spinning low around my shoulders like planets that decided my orbit was fun. Fascinating, he says, and somehow I don't hate the word from him. 7. And they choose. They open when I don't make it about me, I say, because that's what it felt like on the road. Or when I try to. You're not wrong. He glances at Yami. The nobles have lodged a formal claim. They say the books are national artifacts. They intend to take custody. Yami flicks ash into a potted plant that's probably illegal to ash in. They can try. Julius pats down papers until he finds the one he wants. There's a hearing tomorrow. I'll oversee. This kingdom is messy, but it's not a thief's guild. Thank you, I say. Don't thank me yet. He taps a line on the parchment. A saintly order is opening healing stations. Their sponsor is very generous. Their symbol is a circle within a clover. Noelle murmurs, the blessing. Her hand is on the back of the chair. White knuckle light. Julius leans back. They call it concord. People love feeling safe. Sometimes they'll trade anything for it, including their voice. I won't, I say. Good. Julius smiles like a dad who's about to let his kid fall off a bike because it's the only way to learn balance. Then consider this your official invitation to the political kitchen. It's hot. We head for the door. In the hallway, a familiar figure waits in a gold trim coat, hands folded behind his back, posture mean with manners. Leoric, I say. Izuku. He glances at my books. If the court takes them, I will argue for your custody anyway. That's unexpectedly kind. Don't flatter me. I don't trust the court to use power better than the squads. He lowers his voice. And I don't trust anyone not to want them. A beat. He looks away, jaw working. My sister visited a parish. The healers branded her with a circle when she was ill. She says she sleeps better now. She smiles more. She sings a hymn with words I don't know. I met one of them today, I say. He made it sound like trading 3 choices for a blanket. Leoric breathes out a laugh with no humor. If you turn on the bulls, I'll cut you down. If you stand with us, I'll stand with you. You could just shake my hand. He eyes the hand I hold out, then ignores it again with almost comical stubbornness. Earn it. Right, I say. Then, softer, because I can feel the way he's trying not to shake. I'll try. Noelle brushes past, almost shoulder checking him by accident or on purpose. We have training, she says to me, like it's a shield, like it's a plan, like it's a promise not to drown in all this. Coming. As we walk, she nudges me with her elbow. Back there with the wagon, she says quietly. You didn't hesitate. Didn't have time. Still, nice work. The compliment lives in the hallway for a second, small and warm. I tuck it somewhere safe. Night at tea. He bowls base tastes like soup steam and cheap beer. Magna teaches Luck a card trick. Vanessa rigs a tripwire that only catches people who brag. Charmy eats a mooncake shaped like a sheep that boss when you bite it. Gauche polishes a mirror until it could cut you. Gordon says something in a whisper that makes me feel like I just joined a coven in a good way. Noelle stalks to the training yard again. I follow. We keep the drills lean. No commentary. The rhythm gets faster. The guard and the water start to talk to each other in the air. You trusted me today, she says finally, after a shot. That should have singed my hair but didn't because I moved and she adjusted in the same heartbeat. Thank you. You trusted me back, I say. I noticed. She looks down like she doesn't want to smile, then does anyway, quick. Don't make it weird. Never. I promise, and mean it. The 7 books circle, weightless and heavy. The first is open, pages breathing with my pulse. The others hang lick, e-trial doors in a hallway I haven't walked yet. I sniff. Something sweet rides the night breeze. Singing, too, far away, soft and sure. Noelle hears it and goes still. Not the bulls. Not a tavern. The hymn, she says. I listen. The notes are simple and kind, the kind of melody that makes you lean toward it. It wraps the city like a blanket. People want to be held. Tomorrow, I say. Tomorrow, she says back. We train until sweat blurs our thoughts into muscle memory. We don't talk about the hearing. We don't talk about saints. We keep moving. That's how you don't freeze when the cliff crumbles. Your feet remember what to do. At midnight, Yami passes by and tosses me a spare cloak. Courtrooms are colder than caves. Wear that if the nobles start dripping. Got it. He pauses, looking at the orbiting books, at me. At Noelle pretending she wasn't waiting to be noticed. Kid, he says, voice softer than it has a right to be, don't let anyone decide what those things mean but you. I nod. I won't. He vanishes like a rumor. The night thins. The hymn winds down. Somewhere in the city, a healer draws a circle. Somewhere else, a noble signs a paper to make it look official. Somewhere under all that, the heartbeat of the kingdom keeps a stubborn rhythm. Messy, free, alive. I roll my shoulders, feel the guard stir like a friend who will wake if you ask. Again, I say. Noelle smirks. Again, we reset. Hands up, feet set, breath steady. The first book glows, faint and ready. Chapter 1 end. Chapter 2. The Lion's Ballroom Job. The invitation looked like a threat dressed in gold. Vermilion crest stamped at the top, the ink warm like they'd sealed it seconds ago. House Vermilion requests the presence of the Magic Knights for an evening of charity, diplomacy, and restraint. Someone underlined restraint twice, which felt personal. Yami flicked the card back at Fugolian with a smirk. We'll behave, he lied. Fugolian's eyes did that calm burn thing. You will try, he corrected. And somehow it didn't sound like begging. More like a promise that if we didn't, we'd learn what a Vermilion family lecture felt like. The bulls prepped like we were going on a heist disguised as a dance. Vanessa tailored me into a black suit with room to fight in. Charmy made a mountain of finger foods, so you don't eat the donations. Magna gave me a pocket square that was also, apparently, a smoke bomb. Luck zipped around checking exits we hadn't even reached yet. Noelle turned up in a dress that looked like armor made of moonlight and didn't comment on my stare. She lifted her chin, daring me to make it awkward. Nice, I said, normal voice, normal face, no extra blinking. Her lips twitched. You'll do, she muttered, and hooked her arm through mine like we had a mission, because we did. House Vermilion didn't throw parties, they orchestrated storms. Lanterns floated like tame stars under a glass ceiling. The band played fast enough to hide lies. Nobles made circles with their backs so commoners had to walk around. Fugolian stood near the head of the floor, greeting sick kids like they were foreign dignitaries and nobles like they were sick kids. A wall of portraits watched everyone misbehave politely. Eyes open, Yami said, parking himself near a pillar with an expression that dared anyone to be expensive in front of him. Smile like you don't want to punch anyone. I can try, I said. No need, Noelle murmured. You look baffled by glassware. That's close enough to charming. I grinned. Help me tell forks apart and I'll keep you from drowning anyone. Deal. She didn't laugh. She just leaned a hair closer. Pressure translates to heat in a room like that. We drifted. Through greetings, through we're so glad you're here lies. Through the silent calculation of rich people deciding where to spend their eyes. I catalogued the guard rotations, the servers, routes, the balcony doors that stuck a little. Noelle catalogued titles and tempers. Between us, the ballroom turned into a map with moving pieces instead of a blur. That's when the healer arrived. Same white cloak from the yard, only tonight the fabric had been upgraded to sponsored. The symbol at his throat, circle within a clover, caught firelight and threw it back soft. He moved like a person who never bumped into anyone because they got out of his way first. He kissed hands, blessed wrists, smiled at the sick with the urgency of someone peddling something real and the patience of someone who knew the line would come to him. People loved him because he made them feel seen and safe. He even made me like him for a second, which I resented. Don't start a fight with a healer at a charity ball, Noelle said out of the side of her mouth. I won't, I said. Unless he makes me. Fugolian welcomed the man with a nod. Thank you for assisting our clinics, he said, public voice. The city is heavy with need. The city is heavy with suffering, the healer corrected gently. We intend to ease it. We moved on before my face said something my mouth shouldn't. Leoric materialized out of a knot of golden cloth like a blade slipping out of a sheath. He wore the knight like a uniform. Neat, controlled, appropriate. Bulls, he said, which somehow sounded like he'd used our proper names. Dawn, I said back. I couldn't help it. I liked fighting him. And I liked this conversation we kept having where our lines crossed like swords, no anger, all edge. He eyed my orbiting books. Low, quiet, like they were pretending to be jewelry. Try not to knock over a duke, he said dryly. I'll only knock over the ones who deserve it. Careful, he said. In this room, that's most of them. We didn't get to argue about it because the music shifted, for the toast. Fugolian raised a glass. Vermilions, crimson-cloaked and sharp-eyed, joined. Nobles tilted their cups at hope. The band softened. The healer lifted his hands as if to catch something falling. Peace stretched thin. A servant stepped out of the shadow of a pillar with the wrong kind of calm. Eyes too bright, movements too smooth. In his right hand, a little blade that didn't belong in a room like this. He moved toward Fugolian with a smile that wasn't choice. I saw the line forming. I also saw Noelle, 3 steps from a tricky spill of polished marble, in heels meant for dancing, not sprinting. Simple math. I could clear the distance solo if I left her to slip, or I could take one more heartbeat and hook her into the arc so she didn't snap an ankle and become a problem for someone else to catch. I didn't think about it. I refused to leave her. On me, I said, already moving. The second book did not open with a choir. It opened with the quiet satisfaction of acting the right call even though it was slower. The cover flashed. Different clover leaf, different hum, and a thread of light spun out from the page to my wrist. It wasn't rope, it was intention you could pull on. Trust me, I said. I hate trust falls, Noelle said, and put her hand in mine anyway. The thread jumped to her palm like we'd socketed 2 pieces that had always been cut for each other. My guard flared, low and tight around our feet. I yanked. Not her, the space around her, and the thread snapped us across marble like a slingshot, our momentum braided. We didn't skid, we redirected. I hit the servant's line first. Shoulder down, guard compressed into a wedge to bump his blade arm harmlessly wide. Noelle's spell grabbed my tether like it had right of way, water wrapped around my pivot. Turned the wedge into a spin that flowed behind the servant and pinned his legs to the floor with a slick, cold cuff. He dropped without breaking his own neck. My elbow touched the back of High's head just enough to keep him from cracking teeth when he kissed marble. The room exhaled as 100 nobles realized they'd just watched 2 rookies do something you practice for months, not nights. Fugolian never flinched. He lowered his glass like this was the event, and honestly, it was. The white-cloaked healer stood 2 meters away, smiling, palms open. The servant's neck shimmered. A mark on the skin that hadn't been there a breath ago glowed through the sweat, a simple circle nested inside lines like a compass. The servant's smile, the wrong one, flickered like a candle out of air and collapsed. He stared at us, horrified and shaking. I didn't mean. Breathe, I said, and pushed the guard into a small shell around his wrist so he couldn't hurt himself trying to apologize with his hands. Guards flooded. Nobles murmured in polished panic. The band accepted the chaos and slid into an upbeat number for cover because bands know their job better than anyone at parties. Noelle didn't bask. She crouched, met the servant's eyes. Who put that on you? The priest, he said, voice shaking. He said it was protection. I wanted my daughter to get medicine. They said if I helped. The healer arrived with a calm that would have made saints jealous. This man is confused, he said gently to Fugolian. Fear makes us see enemies. Let us tend him. Noelle's jaw tightened. Tend him how? Remove his fear, the healer said, like that wasn't the creepiest pitch I'd heard all week. By removing his memory of why he was afraid. I asked. Light, pleasant. The kind of tone you use in a business meeting when you're throwing a chair at the window. He met my eyes with a smile that said, you poor thing, let adults talk. By helping him accept peace. Fugolian stepped between us like a wall made of respect. He will be tended. In custody, he said. By our healers. A vermilion butler with hands like iron and a face like courteous granite nodded and signaled his people. The servant didn't fight. He looked at me like I'd thrown him a ladder, not a rope. I nodded. Little things matter. The band found a dance. The party reassembled happy faces like a war had not almost happened in the middle of a toast. On a balcony a little later, the night air felt like truth. Noelle leaned on the stone rail, carefully not letting her dress wrinkle. I shrugged off my jacket, spun it at my elbow, aiming for casual. She saw it coming. "Don't you dare," she said softly. I flicked the jacket over the rail instead of over her shoulders, one a sigh swing that didn't make a spectacle out of a kindness. She watched it fall into a bush that cost more than our base. The corner of her mouth hitched. "Thank you," she said. "Anytime." We watched the city breathe. Someone inside laughed too loud. The hymn from last night ghosted the edge of hearing, or maybe that was just my brain looking for patterns. Leoric found us without pretending he wasn't. He folded his arms on the rail like a man taking confession in reverse. "You moved like you'd rehearsed," he said. "We practice," Noelle said. "We don't lecture each other about it." He ignored the jab. "The circle on that man's neck. My sister has one." He said it like he was setting a broken bone himself. "She got sick. They helped. She sings, now. She smiles in her sleep. She says the hymn feels like being hugged by a house. How do I argue with a house that loves her?" "You don't," I said. "You argue with the builder who thinks all doors should lock from the outside." He breathed out through his nose. The smile he didn't make haunted his face anyway. "Your metaphors have improved. Truly my greatest power-up," I said. He stared at the dance floor where the healer swam thrug. Nobles like a blessing that collected favors as it went. "Order keeps people safe," he said quietly, like he was scolding himself, not me. "My house believes this. I was raised on it." "Order without choice is a cage," Noelle said. "Just as quiet, just as fierce. I was raised on that, for what it's worth." He considered us like a mathematician forced to use paint. "Tomorrow the court will try to take your books," he said to me. "If they succeed, some captain will put you on a leash. If they fail, some noble will try a quieter leash." He paused. "I dislike leashes." That last part wasn't for us, it was for himself. His jaw flexed and unflexed. "You can just say you're on our side," I offered. He looked at my hand, open on the rail, then at the city, then back at his own reflection in the glass. "Earn it," he said again. Softer, the edge bending into something that looked suspiciously like trust trying to stand. We didn't get to do follow-up because Julius found us like a dad who never sleeps. "Lovely night," he said cheerfully, as if we hadn't almost ruined a gala. "Try not to start any more religious debates before the hearing." "Define." "Start," I said. "Define." "Religious," Noelle muttered. Julius winked. "I'll see you in the morning. Wear whatever makes you feel like a category the court can't file." He left humming 2 songs at once. We slipped back into the bowel room long enough to make sure nothing else was going to explode. The healer moved like a patient tide. People leaned into him like he was gravity. It scared me more than a dragon. On our way out, the servant, cleaned up, escorted, caught my eye. He lifted a hand, not in thanks, not precisely. More like a tether. The sigil at his neck had dulled, but it was still there, a quiet metal underskin. He mouthed a word that could have been, "Help." I nodded. He nodded back. It was small and enough. Courtrooms are built to make you feel loud even when you whisper. The nobles who wanted my books sat in a row like a blade from a bad dream. Julius presided from a seat that looked less like a throne and more like a chair used by a person who liked chairs. Yami perched on one side like a warning on legs. Fugolian represented noble patience. The healer sat in the public gallery, hands folded, face a painting of compassion. The bulls crowded where they shouldn't be, radiating menace and snacks. A courier read their petition. National artifact, strategic risk, custody for the safety of the kingdom, blah blah with ribbons. They made kingdom sound like a very specific house address. Julius gestured lazily. Response. I stepped up and did not try to sound smart. They open when I choose someone else over myself, I said, steady. That's the deal. If someone claims them as property, they stop being what they are. The gallery murmured. A few nobles sneered. One on the end looked bored enough to cry. A different noble, older, soft hands, eyes like locked drawers, leaned forward. Heroic sentiments make bad policy, he said. Artifacts require control. Control would have let a man stab a captain to keep his medicine, I said. We chose not to do that. The healer's smile warmed. Peace requires shepherds, he said. Voice velvet and bells. A child does not understand why a fence is good. Then teach the child, I said. Don't build a fence out of their throat. Yami coughed to hide a laugh. Fugolian did not smile, but the air around him did. Julius rubbed his chin. I didn't expect theology, he said lightly. All right. The books are currently functional precisely because they are unowned. Confiscation would endanger their utility. I find that an amusing legal corner. He tapped his quill on the desk and looked at the nobles like he was asking if they were bored yet. Petition denied. He keeps them. With Black Bull's oversight. Try not to break the palace. A noble sputtered so hard he almost swallowed a signet ring. Another squeezed the arm of his chair in a way that promised conspiracies over tea. The healer simply nodded, as if the verdict didn't touch him. Court adjourned with the kind of scrape that starts a dozen smaller dinners. People filed out to go rewrite each other's minds at less echo Y volumes. I stepped into the hallway and breathed like I'd been underwater for 10 minutes. Noelle bumped her shoulder into mine once, friendly fire. You didn't yell, she said. I saved my yelling for when it works, I said. I'm evolving. Leoric waited near a pillar, because of course he did. He studied my face like he was trying to read a footnote. You just told the court you won't be owned, he said. That was the fun part. The difficult part will be living that way, he said. The world doesn't like people it can't file. Then we keep walking, I said. Print smudges. He didn't give me points for poetry, but he didn't dock me either. There's a parish in my district, he said. They mark the faithful with circles. They sing at night. My sister won't stop smiling. She says she feels light. She won't stop humming a 7th verse. He swallowed, then admitted a thing. I don't know that verse. Then let's go learn it, I said. Officially, he asked. Unofficially, Yami said behind us, appearing like a door we hadn't noticed. Officially, you two have paperwork. Noelle made a face like we'd said a swear. Paperwork. Vanessa will sign it with a really pretty name, Yami promised. You three go on a stroll. We did. The parish sat crooked in a part of the city that had learned to live with its own angles. Kids played in alleys. Laundry drew maps across air. The little church had an honest bell and a door that had been opened so many times it didn't squeak anymore. The hymn reached us before the steps did. It wasn't the melody that scared me. It was how easy it was to like it. The notes folded over each other gentle as hands. People in the courtyard swayed without being told to. A line formed for blessings. Shaky men and tired women and kids with two big eyes looking for a shortcut to a day without hurting. We cut across the yard like we belonged there. Noelle took in the faces like she was counting all the things that could go wrong and all the reasons they'd be worth it anyway. Leoric kept his back straight and his hands at his sides. I kept my palms open and my pulse slow. Inside, a young priest with circles printed on his sleeves laid hands and drew suns that sank into skin. He stayed grounded. He didn't overperform. He believed. That was worse. At the end of the line, the say. Arvant from the ball stood with his family. His daughter held his hand tight like he might float away. His neck mark looked duller in daylight, but it was still there. He saw me and straightened without letting go of her. Sir, he said, cheeks flushing like he wasn't sure if he was allowed to call me anything. I wanted to say, I didn't, I'm sorry. You wanted your kid to have medicine, I said. We understand. I crouched to smile at the girl. Hey, I'm Izuku. That your bear? She hid half her face in the bear's ear and nodded. Good bear, I told the ear. Would you like the kind of medicine that doesn't come with homework? Quote, she peeked. Do bears do homework? Only if their dads promise to stop letting people draw on their necks, I said, then looked up at the priest. The priest didn't attack. He lifted his chin like an honest person about to try to convince you to join a club that actually does good bake sales. We don't force anyone, he said. We offer a path to ease. He Circle helps you remember that you're accepted. And if someone whispers while the circle is hot? I asked, soft. What then? He hesitated. The wrong pause. The people in line didn't hear it. I did. Noel did. Leoric did. He recovered. It's a reminder to listen. To who? Noel asked. To the voice that wants what is best, he said. Leoric's jaw ticked. And if the voice disagrees with my house? Then your house should ask why, the priest said, smiling like a man who had never once had to ask why his house had doors. The hymn rolled over us again, like a comforter and a tide. The daughter squeezed her father's hand. Papa, I don't want the circle, she whispered, too honest to whisper. He swallowed. He looked at me. He looked at the priest. He looked at Leoric's perfect coat and Noel's dangerous dress and the bare ear. He took a breath like it hurt. I don't either, he said. The priest's smile went a shade thinner. We don't withhold medicine from those who decline concord, he said quickly. Too quickly. We simply prioritize the willing. There it was. Policy dressed as kindness. I didn't grandstand. I just reached into my pocket and pulled out the smoke. Bomb pocket square magna had pressed on me. I waved it once like a fan to cut the hymn off my ears. Stupid. Maybe. It helped. I looked at the priest and gave him the exact same smile he'd been giving me. Do you have a back room where your order keeps records? I asked. I love paperwork. He blinked. The first crack. I don't. Those are handled by the Kira archives, Leoric said, low, like he hated saying it. House Kira maintains ledgers for donations, parish expansions, and sanctum placements. He met my eyes without trying to hide the hit. My uncle sits on that board. Noel breathed out. Of course he does. The priest recovered his rhythm, pity sliding back into place. We're all trying to help, he said, more to Leoric than me now. Brother, your burden looks heavy. Leoric's smile was a thing with teeth. I carry it. The soldier in him wanted to draw a line right there. The brother in him wanted to sprint. The noble in him wanted this to be solved by a letter to the correct desk. I touched his sleeve. Not a big gesture. Enough to say you don't have to pick alone. He didn't shrink. His posture changed by a millimeter. Permission, not surrender. We left WITH nothing but names and the hymn stuck in our ribs. In the yard, the servant jogged a little to keep up. He looked at me like a man who'd decided his mouth needed to be braver than his head. Sir, he said, there's more. The healers, they said if I helped at the ball, my Celia would be moved up the list. She's Leoric's. I mean, sir, she's. Leoric stopped walking. The world pressed pause. My sister, he asked, voice careful enough to cut. The servant nodded, miserable. They said she'd be blessed into a choir. That she'd never hurt again. Leoric's hand went to his chest like there should have been a sword there. Where? Sanctum. Under the Kira archives, the servant whispered. They said she'd sing down there first, to get ready to sing with everyone. Please don't. Please don't. I just want her to be happy. Nobody breathed for a second. Then Leoric did. He breathed like a man coming up from under, water in his lungs and a decision coming anyway. Thank you, he said. It cost him, but he said it right. The servant flinched like gratitude was a spell. Tears started like he hadn't expected them. He dragged his sleeve over his face. His daughter patted his arm like a tiny nurse. The bear looked judgmental about religion and I liked that bear very much. We'll go now, I said. We'll fix what we can and not promise things we can't. The man nodded too fast. I'm sorry, he said again. Because that's what people do when a system makes them complicit. I'm sorry. Leoric turned like a compass finding north by force. His voice went quiet and lethal. My house, he said, will open its doors. Noelle set her shoulders. Then let's make a mess where it matters. I checked my hands. One book glowed warm. Another hummed like a plucked string. Threads ghosted my fingers when I flexed. I could taste momentum. Move, I said. We did. We didn't plan a speech for Kira Mansion. We planned a point of entry and a point of exit and 3 points in between where you could fall into 100 years of family politics and not come out whole. Leoric walked us through the front gate like it owed him an apology. Servants blinked. Stewards tucked ledgers under pap. Ers that weren't thick enough to hide them. An uncle appeared in a doorway with that smile people use when they're about to try paternalism as a weapon. Leoric, he said warmly. You've brought guests. Magic Knights, Leoric said. Not warm. We require the lower archives. The uncle kept everything smooth except his eyes. Those are restricted. He looked at Noelle like she was a garnish. He looked at me like a stain. He looked at Leoric like a problem that had to be handled with careful wine. Then unrestrict them, Leoric said. Family matters should be discussed with family, the uncle said, stepping closer to put a hand on Leoric's shoulder like he hadn't just called the guard with his gaze. Leoric didn't move away and he didn't lean in. He just said, very calmly, Celia. He uncle froze like he'd heard a gun he hadn't seen. Then he smiled again, thinner. Celia is enjoying the care of our partners, he said. She asked too. Noelle's impatience crackled like static. Why? Our partners branded a servant like a livestock registry, she said. Release your ledgers. The uncle looked past her at me again, then at the 7 books that had dropped from my orbit to hover lower, closer. Like they'd decided to be visible intimidation tonight. He did the math wrong and decided we were bluffing. He snapped his fingers. Guards stepped from alcoves. Golden Dawn cloaks turned corners like an answer. House Kira will of course cooperate with the Wizard King, the uncle said smoothly, after proper notice. I rolled my neck. I said, you just comply now because all of your polite sentences have the word later hidden in them and your sister is under your feet. The uncle's smile died. You are out of your station. Arguable, I said, and then I stopped talking. Because talking wasn't going to open a door. I hooked a thread to Noelle's wrist with a touch like a high five. She didn't need the cue, she was already stepping left. Leoric stepped right. The first guard blinked, surprised to discover he was staring at air where I'd been. I tugged the thread. Noelle's spell slid through the gap I made in the room, a clean crescent that hit a floor seam without touching a human. The seal on the lower archive door hissed like a cat and peeled. Down, I said. Down, Noelle echoed. Leoric didn't wait for permission or for his uncle to summon the exact ammo. Of official paperwork needed to bury a person. He drew a sun-lined short blade off his belt with the efficient indecency of a noble breaking his own rules. He cut a clean line between the first 2 guards without hitting either of them and took the steps 3 at a time. I grabbed his sleeve at the landing and threw him forward with a thread past a pressure line we didn't have time to disarm. The floor tried to turn into a spike. It hit my guard and skidded off into the wall like a bad idea. Thanks, he grunted, absolutely not smiling. You're welcome, I said, absolutely not winded. We hit the lower archives like a storm. Books watched us with too many eyes. Ledgers moved on their own. The Kira crest stamped itself on the air just to make a point. The room smelled like ink and the long, tired patience of power. Noelle slammed both hands onto a table. Water spiraled out and lifted a stack of papers just enough to slip a thread under. I snapped that thread to the stack and reeled. The paperwork came to me like a fish that wanted to be caught. Leoric grabbed a ledger that fought him and won by being stronger. He slapped it open. His mouth went thin. Sanctum placements, he said. Funding lines. Parish expansions. Names of those prioritized for Concord. He flipped a page. His finger stopped. Celia Kira. Pilot choir. We didn't get to read the rest because the flow. R above us started yelling in the voice of a noble house being embarrassed. Golden Dawn boots pounded the stairs like justice practiced on expensive floors. Leoric closed the ledger and looked at me. Like he was ready to do something irreversible. We run or we stand? He asked. I listened. Boots, orders, the scrape of a seal being reset, the subtle silence that meant the priest had sent a runner to someone with a nicer ring. We stand until we can run, I said. And we don't break people who don't need breaking. Noelle's smile was sharp. Finally something we're both good at. Leoric exhaled. Fine. Dawn Knights took the final steps like professionals. Their captain, a man whose entire personality was a straight blade, stopped at the threshold. He took in the scene. One ledger open, one noble nephew armed. One black bull aiming for a misdemeanor, one Silva looking like a fairy tale decided to stab something. The captain weighed duty and embarrassment and family and the rumor mill in one blink. House Kira archives are closed, he said. Then open them, Leoric said. On my authority. The captain didn't look at the uncle hovering behind him in a way that counted as looking. He considered Leoric like a teacher considering a student who had just turned in an essay on fire. Then he stepped aside half an inch. Don't make me regret this, he said. We won't, Leoric said. Meaning I won't make you regret trusting me. Then he slid the ledger into his cloak like stealing from himself. The uncle sputtered. Words like scandal and censure tried to be threats and tripped over process. He reached for a bell pull. Noel snapped a light ribbon of water at his wrist, not to hurt, just to short the reflex. He yanked his hand back like the string had bitten him. We're going to get my sister, Leoric said. Try to stop me again and I will stop you better. We went up, out, and into a city that suddenly felt like it had been holding its breath for an entirely different reason. The hymn changed. It wasn't coming from the parish. It rose from low ground, harbor side. A wet wind carried it, salt and faith braided. People in the street turned their heads like sleepwalkers catching a scent. Flood district, Noel said, already moving. Leoric and I didn't need to say anything. We ran. Harbors are built to drown or trade depending on who's better at shouting. Tonight the water wanted to negotiate. It rolled in patient and tall, not a wave, not exactly. A wall with a mind, silvered by street torches and dotted with smiling faces. People in the shallows didn't scream. They relaxed, hands open, eyes soft as the tide came for them. The hymn threaded between buildings, a rope tugging on spines. Get out of the water. A sailor screamed, useless, terrified. A woman smiled at him and kept walking deeper like the ocean owed her a favor. This isn't natural, Noel said, which won the evening's understatement award. Leoric's jaw had been clenched for 10 minutes, it clicked looser. He looked ready to break every lever in the city. Orders. Hold bridges, I said without asking for permission. Clear alleys. Anyone with a circle, we cut the signal, not the person. Noel, you're with me on the front. Leoric, locks and captains. If that thing touches the warehouse quarter, we're gutting half the city at dawn. He didn't argue about me telling him to do anything. He nodded sharp and exploded into motion, sunline blade drawing arcs across chains and pulleys, shouting precise commands in a voice that made men who'd never obeyed a noble in their lives obey him now. Noel and I hit the waterline where the hymn felt like a physical hand. The second book thrummed at my wrist. Threads hung invisible until I flicked my fingers, then they snapped, clean and present. Between me and her and the world. She didn't wait for a speech. She threw a dragon that looked more like a choice than a monster, teeth made of current, eyes that understood what needed breaking. It met the rising wall and bit. The wall smiled. That was the wrong sentence and also exactly what happened. The water tried to wrap around the dragon's skull and baptize it into obedience. Not today, I said, and whipped a thread around the dragon's neck like a bridle, gentle, guiding, letting Noel's control stay hers while borrowing its line. The dragon dipped, rolled under the hymn layer of the flood, and dragged it sideways instead of up. The water complained. People in the nearest alley shook their heads like a spell had just missed them by a hair. I snapped Aneth, thread to a guy on a sinking crate whose eyes were going soft. Hey, I yelled, remember the dumbest thing you've ever laughed at? He blinked like I'd thrown juice in his face. The time my Reen fell into a basket and the basket got up and ran. Good, I yanked. The thread grabbed him by the memory and dragged him out of the singing. He tumbled into street muck coughing and laughing because his brain had been forced to pick something that wasn't the hymn. Keep them talking. I shouted at anybody close enough to hear and dumb enough to help, which is exactly the kind of person you want in a fight like this. Anything, jokes, lies you're proud of, your grandma's bread recipe. A vendor bellowed a spice list like a war song. A sailor taught a stranger a curse as long as a rope. A kid started chanting the names of every dog he ever wanted. The flood didn't like competing with all that messy, human sound. Dawn on the bridge, Leoric yelled from 3 roofs over. We're holding the north lane. Anchor me, I yelled back. He didn't ask what that meant. He just cut a sun line from bridge to crane to weather vane, a glowing triangle you could hang a country from. I threw a thread and caught it. Then let the paradox settle. Light line, water line, my line. The city's geometry became a harness. On your mark, Noel said. 3, I said, because I like cheating gravity. 2, now. We yanked. The dragon surged. The flood tilted just enough to miss the market spine, sliding into a warehouse lane where crates didn't sing back. The hymn fought us. It tried to be in our bones. It promised I'd feel better if I put my arms down and let someone nicer hold them for me. I shoved my arms higher. Further down, a black sword cut a clean wound into the water's logic. Asta sprinted along a railing, yelling something about devil rights and bread, and the flood rolled off him like prayer off a tax collector. Izuku, he shouted with enormous joy, like we were at a picnic. Your string thing is cool. No, thing is cooler. I yelled back, and turned his lane into a guided channel with a thread so his anti-magic cut could go around a family instead of through them. He grinned like a weapon and kept going. Yuno dropped in out of a sky that had no right to have a sky that pretty, star lines pinning the worst eddies like he was sewing the harbor to the notion of dry land. I hooked his constellations with the tiniest flip of fortune. It wasn't unlocked last week, but right now, angles I barely understood started to tilt just so, falling debris missing men by inches. Ropes holding a hair longer, feet landing where stones didn't, all those micro winds adding up to oxygen where there would have been water. Keep it, he called. Stealing it, I called back. Noelle took the brunt and did not blink. Sweat cut a clean line down her temple. She bared her teeth at the flood like a queen telling a parliament to sit. More, she said. On it, I said, and pushed. Something inside me cracked. The good kind, the kind that exposes wiring you didn't know you had. The sixth book flared like a heartbeat too fast and suddenly I could give. Stamina shoved out of me along the threads. Boosts to legs that needed to jump, breath to lungs that were forgetting how, grit to arms that were bracing too long. I didn't choose where it went. The lynx did, intelligent as pack instincts. It hurt in a way I could live with. Leoric felt it and didn't waste it. He took a line he would have had to abandon and held it, shouting fewer orders because men understood him the first time. A kid with a broom became a cork in a door that needed a cork. A woman whose job was shouting at everyone to stop shouting became a conductor and we sang the flood backward. By the time the hymn realized we were not going to give it a choir, it was too late. The wall slid back into being water. People on the edge woke up with bruises and very strong opinions about religion. The harbor breathed. The crates fell over with a series of thumps like a giant finishing a drum solo. Noelle sagged one step. I grabbed her elbow before she could pretend she'd chosen to crouch. She flicked me a look that said both thank you and say nothing. I nodded and shut up. Leoric stood on the central lock, hair stuck to his forehead, coat wrecked, eyes bright. He looked down at his city like he dared it to misbehave again. Men clapped him on the back and didn't care he was a noble because tonight he'd been a wall that moved like a man. A woman sobbed into a crate of fish she hadn't lost. A kid pet a dog that had learned to swim 5 minutes ago. The sailor who'd been yelling curses kissed the vendor who'd been yelling spices and they both went, huh, and then did it again. We won. It wasn't clean. It was very much alive. Smile, I said to Noelle without looking. I am, she said, breathing like a runner who loves the last stretch. On the inside. Gross, I said, externalize it. She rolled her eyes and kissed me fast, like a spark, like keeping a promise to herself more than to me. Then she pulled away before the moment could turn into a conversation. People first, she said, and jogged toward triage. Stupidly beautiful with a smudge on her cheek. Leoric hopped down from the lock, landing next to us with more grace than his wrecked coat should allow. He looked at our hands and didn't mention them. He looked at the city and did. We need the archives to stay open, he said, voice calm again. We need roots. We need to find the sanctum under my house. We will, I said. We turned to organize the kind of stupid list that saves lives. Names, cots, clean water, dry blankets, 700 tiny orders that add up to a city deciding not to drown tonight or tomorrow. That's when Lucius picked his moment and strolled down a sunbeam that shouldn't have been there because the sky was not currently applying for that job. He didn't bring a choir. He didn't need one. He brought perfect posture and a smile smoother than marble and the kind of quiet that makes people lean in. The healer from the ball flanked him, face like a benevolent footnote. Holy soldier. stepped into view with the relaxed lope of men who were absolutely not going to have to draw their swords to feel powerful tonight. Lucius raised his hands and didn't shout. "Friends," he said, "Voy. Ce carrying like a bell that had learned to whisper, thank you for delivering so many of our brothers and sisters to safety. Nobody had delivered anyone to him, we dragged them from his tide. But the crowd was tired, and he was pretty. And he smiled like a promise. He knelt and touched a man's temple and the man's headache vanished in a rush so pure it made my arm hair stand up. He kissed a child's brow without touching and the kid's cough stopped. He asked a grandmother her name and said it back like a blessing. People cheered. People we had just saved cheered for the man who'd tried to own their fear. Lucius looked at me over the noise. His smile didn't change when he recognized me. In fact, it might have warmed. The 7th Concord will be complete soon, he said to the crowd. At dawn, Sanctum Prime. He didn't have to add come and be washed. It hung in the air anyway like the juiciest lie. He inclined his head to Fugolian, to Juno, to Asta, to the captains who appeared at the edges like wolves with badges. He inclined it last to me, the barest nod in a language only people who liked chess and knives understood. Then he left, miracles trailing him like confetti. Smug, Noelle said, wiping her face with the back of her hand. It left a line of clean skin in a smear of salt and I loved her more for not caring. Public, Leoric said, voice back to Blade. He wants the story. Then we write a louder one, I said. He didn't argue. He didn't tell me to earn anything. He just looked at the horizon like a clock and said, Dawn. Dawn, I agreed. A few feet away, the servant from the ball showed up again because life likes to put all your plot lines in one location when you don't have time. He couldn't meet Leoric's eyes. He stared at the ground like it had answers. Sir, he said, voice hoarse, please, my Celia. They moved her. They said she was ready to sing at Sanctum Prime. If that happens, he choked and pushed through it because fathers do. If that happens, she won't be mine anymore. Leoric's face didn't break. He didn't let it. He just set it aside carefully and replaced it with the version a captain wears when he has to tell a city where to stand. He put one hand on the man's shoulder the way men do when they don't know how to hug in public. We'll get her, he said. No drumroll, no flair, just steel. We'll get her now. The man nodded, relief and terror sharing a house. His daughter, Bear upgraded with a ribbon from somebody's triage kit, lifted the toy like a salute. I tugged on the second book's thread and felt it answer like a pulse. My shoulder ached in that honest way I trust. Around us, the bulls set up cots like a circus that knew how to survive. The Dawn held a bridge like they'd always owned it. The city decided to be itself rather than someone's project. Let's end a hymn, I said. Noelle slipped into step at my side without asking where we were going. Leoric matched pace on the other side, drawing a line with his body tall enough to lean on. We moved. Chapter 2 end. Chapter 3. When saving hurts. Rain knifed sideways hard enough to sting. Bells clanged off beat, like whoever pulled them kept second-guessing salvation. We took the church door at a run. The nave bloomed with cheap candles and the kind of twilight that makes guilt sound holy. Parishioners packed the pews in their best clothes like armor, faces shiny with hope. Necks tattooed with circles that had never seen ink. The choir stood behind the altar singing the 7th hymn off-key, glowy-eyed and serene. It was the kind of peace you get from giving up. Celia Kira stood at the center, barefoot on the stone, white dress wet at the hem. Her hair stuck to her cheeks. Her smile broke something in Leoric I didn't have a name for. He stopped dead in the aisle. 2 steps in, all sun-line polish gone, just brother. Celia. She turned. Wrong light warmed her irises from the inside. Her voice came out threaded with a second one. Gentle, exact, certain. Hello, Leo. The white-cloaked priest from the parish slid half a step to put himself between us and the choir, palms open like he was accepting rain. You can't be here. Luck cracked his knuckles. We're pretty obviously here. No lecturing, I said. Just keep the pews clean. I tapped Noelle's wrist. Left flank, crowd control. Nobody hurts civilians. She nodded once, jaw set. Magna, take the side door. Lock the back row if they run. Magna grinned. Love a fire code violation. He ghosted toward the side entrance with 2 bulls in tow. The hymn rolled again, tugging like a tide. The choir's smiles deepened, some of the congregation echoing, a murmur of yes that made my skin itch. The second grimoire warmed at my wrist like a hand squeezing back. Threads wanted to jump. I moved down the center aisle, not fast, not slow. Leoric stepped with me, blade sheathed, because you don't draw steel at your sister unless you intend to cut a lie off her. He didn't know if he was ready to do either yet. Celia, he said, voice steady, polite, begging. Will you come down and speak with me? She tilted her head. The wrong gold flickered over her teeth when she smiled. Why climb down when the light is up here? The priest lifted a hand almost tenderly. She sings with us now. She chose a promise, I said. Not a leash. He didn't flare. He just looked at my orbiting books, then at the people in the pews who had started to sway. The hymn thickened. The circles on necks brightened 1 notch. Celia stepped off the dais, bare feet silent on the stone. She never looked at me. Her eyes found Leoric like they always had. You always liked carrying too much, she said with someone else's calm. This is lighter. He laughed once, raw. Do you lecture me now? No. Her head tilted again, listening to something only she could hear. He says he can help you. Leoric's face went blade flat. The second voice answered through her lips. Clear as a hand on your shoulder. Peace is a gift, Captain Kira. There is enough pain in the world without men like you choosing more. Lucius didn't need to walk through a door to be here. He wore her vocal cords like a polite scarf and spoke in a tone designed for prayer. Let her go, I said, because sometimes simple is the only way to make your feet remember what to do. Let your fear go, Lucius through Celia corrected, smiling Celia's smile. You know the price of freedom. You pay it every day. Come stand here. I will heal the choir. I will end the flood of your worry. He gestured, not with a hand, but with the heavy, sweet logic in his voice, and the choir turned, 20 pairs of golden irised eyes watching us without blinking. The parishioners followed with their necks like boats following a current. Noelle's voice cut the fog, dry as tinder. Izuku. Pews left are moving. I see it, I said, because the second grimoire twanged like a plucked string and I couldn't not see the threads. I stepped into the open space and let the book finish what my mouth started. Leaf 2 flared, lines snapping out from my palms to pillars, to pew corners, to the nice old lady's cane, to Noelle's bracer. The tethers hummed like sage advice. Trust me, I asked Noelle. I don't like the word, she said, already locking her stance into mine. Then trust the math. I tugged left. Noelle's water slid along the threads I laid down, curling low, dampening the floorboards under the first 2 pews without touching ankles. The hymn had to compete with balance now. People sat. Good. Luck blurred past the right margin, bouncing 3 zealots off hymn books with the kind of precision that looks chaotic and isn't. Magna slapped the back door with a flaming hand and then, realizing how that looked, put the fire out with his coat before Noelle could hiss his full name. Charmy body checked a confused usher with a tray of rolls and then, apologies failing, handed him 3 rolls. Leoric took 2 steps down the aisle he'd grown up judging. Celia, he said, quiet. Do you want this? The gold cooled a fraction. I want to stop waking up with the scream locked in my throat, she said. Voice quivering around someone else's calm. I want, Leo, I want a day without choosing. My gut pulled left and right. The wrong answer sounded so good. Lucius's tone stayed gentle. You see, she has told you what she wants. The fence keeps wolves out, Captain. It is love. Fences also keep people in, I said, and I heard how tired I sounded. Good. I wanted him to hear the scrape. No one gets to be your livestock. The priest took that like a compliment. Livestock are safe. Everybody out of the pews. Noelle called, crisp as a bell. Back wall, eyes on me. We walk, we breathe. Nobody touches that choir. People obeyed her because her voice had the cadence of competence. I hooked threads to the edges of her order, gave her motion a path. We started moving room without letting the room know it was being moved. Celia raised her hand and the back row of the choir lifted off their feet an inch. Not magic. Song. The hymn had hands now. It pulled at our ankles, coaxing. Promising to catch if we fell. Don't, Leoric said to Celia. It wasn't a command. It was memory asking favor. Don't take them into it. It's not taking, she said, earnest and horrible. It's giving back the hurt. Her fingers twitched. The choir rose another inch. I walked, easy, like I'd planned on doing it all night. The first grimoire slid into my palm with the gentle CER. Tainty of a tool that knows where it belongs. I pressed guard low and wide and made floor where him wanted water. The choir's shoes found purchase again. A few blinked. One shook her head, eyes welling. Celia saw that and smiled like a midwife. Lucius through Celia changed tactics. Izuku Midoriya, he said, wearing my name like a gift. Kneel. Accept Concord. I will pause the sanctum. The choir will be healed. No more false choices. Quote. The room tilted. Kneeling would fix this, right now. The people staring at me would exhale. Leoric would get his sister back smiling. Noelle would. No. She woe. Old never forgive me for letting someone else own my spine so I could feel better about one fight. The third grimoire spun closer. You're not strong enough alone, I said out loud, for me, for Noelle. For the stupid part of my brain that thinks I have to be. On me. Her eyes flashed and softened at the same time. Finally, I reached. Not with hands, but with the part of me that believed the whole point of power was to hand it to someone who could use it better at that angle. Leaf 3 flipped open without a glow show. The thread between us thickened, doubled, braided. Her water heard my guard. My guard learned the curvature of her wave. Our breaths lined up by accident and then on purpose. Again, she said. Together, I said. We cut the hymn, not with force, but with harmony. Her water spiraled around my shield and turned my blocks into drills, my counters into curves. The choir's notes wobbled. The wrong gold flickered. The parishioners found their feet without falling in love with the floor. People started crying in that bewildered way you cry when something picks the lock on your relief and you don't know if you should be grateful or furious. Celia watched and did not fight us. She adjusted. Her hand moved like a conductor trying out a new meter. The hymn slid keys. Lucius slid with her. You will break yourself, he said to me, calm, not unkind. You will do it to prove a point. You will do it to avoid asking for help. You will do it because you do not know how to stop. I almost smiled. I do now. The third link burned in my bones like a bright rope. The first shield in my hand steadied. The second thread hummed. The sixth, stamina siphon, nudged at me from the edge of slaughter range. I told it to wait. This wasn't the moment to cut calories into the air for strangers. It would be. Not yet. Celia reached the bottom of the steps. She stood close enough that I could see the little childhood scar on her left eyebrow. Kid on stairs, a fall, Leoric ca. Reeing her and never telling anyone, he cried. The wrong voice borrowed that face again. I can spin this in 10 words and you will walk into it smiling, Lucius said, inside her mouth. Let me carry the choices. You can still fight. I will give you a job. You will help more people. Your pain will count in ways that aren't disaster. He saw me. I'll give him that. He aimed the arrow at the exact hollow under my ribs. Offer accepted, I said. Leoric hissed. Noelle tensed. The room leaned forward. I held my hand out toward Celia like a man choosing a ring. Her fingers lifted to take it. Then I moved first. I didn't take her hand. I took her blessing. The fifth grimoire unlocked with a noise like a rib popping back where it belongs. No light, no choir, just a razor cool sliding up into my palm. Ruin, not the big ugly kind. The little one you can point like a surgeon's scalpel at a tumor and pray your hand doesn't shake. Sorry, I said to Celia, to Leoric, to myself. I'll carry it. I lifted the blade just enough to catch the edge of the glowing circle under her skin. I did not cut her. I cut the bond. Devil edge sever bit into a line that shouldn't exist and then turned like a key. The magic fought. It wanted to be a wedding ring too tight to take off. It wanted to be bone. I took the backlash into my own chest. It hit like swallowing a nest of hornets and telling your heart not to panic. My knees went soft. My teeth ached. The 5 other books jolted in orbit. The room skated left and back. Noelle's hand was already at my elbow, nail biting into skin, giving me something to find center through. The circle on Celia's neck snapped off in a ripple, threads of light tearing like spider silk. The hymn hiccuped. She gasped. The wrong glow in her irises blew out like a candle you didn't realize you wanted to keep. Then she looked at me, not through me, not around me, at me, and I understood every stupid decision I had made up to now. Leoric's sister had been kind before the circle. She was kind again. She was also angry in the way kind people get when someone tries to steal the edges of their kindness and sell it as virtue. "What did you do?" she whispered, voice hers again and horrified because I was shaking. She reached to steady me on reflex and then flinched like she'd touch a stove. "I cut the rope," I said through a bad smile. "You're allowed to be mad about it." The priest made a sound like a glass breaking. He lifted both hands, meaning to pace the circle back with a bigger one. Noel snapped a water lash across his wrists before his fingers could draw. He yelped. Luck took 3 steps and was suddenly there, very polite while explaining with his fists why the priest was going to take a nap. A few choir members toppled like people waking up too fast. One threw up. One started sobbing into her own hands. Another took a swing at me on reflex. Leoric caught the fist without hurting it and gently put the owner back on a pew like. He'd been training for this his whole life and hated that he had to use it here. Celia sagged. Leoric found her without looking, his hand at the back of her neck, cradling. She leaned into him like a tired prayer, then pushed away enough to glare at me with more life than she'd had 10 seconds ago. "Put it back," she said. "Please." I shook my head. My throat hurt. "No." Her eyes filled and didn't spill. "It was quiet. It was so quiet." "I know," I said, and wanted to throw up for a different reason. "I want that for you. But not like that." Lucius, for once, didn't try to talk through her mouth. He didn't need to. The hymn tried to get up without her. The priest began a softer verse from the floor, whisper voice sticky with zeal. Noel's glare cut him off. The parishioners mumbled, unsure, lost without the warm hand telling them which way to lean. I hated the part of this that was me taking away something that had helped. I hated it and I'd do it again. "Move," Magna yelled from the side door. "Company." White cloaks flowed into the nave, gentle faces, holy sigils, the kind of soldiers who wear palms up compassion like armor you can forgive. The front rank parted and a F.A. Familiar, "I am nothing if not reasonable," smile walked in. Not Lucius. A mouthpiece with his cadence polished onto his tongue. "We are interrupting a sanctification," he said, tone apologetic like we w. "Are the ones who knocked soup onto a baby. Please stand down." "No," I said, "you first." The mouthpiece counted bulls, counted the Dawn Knights at the door who didn't know which way to turn their cloaks in this room. Counted Leoric with a ledger tucked under his ruined coat and his sister under his arm. Counted Noel with water humming along a thread that was currently running through my bones. He did math. He didn't love the result. "We can heal your pain," he said to the choir, pivoting, ignoring me. "We can bring you. You can pause it," Noel snapped. Her hair was falling out of its pretty. I'd never seen anyone look more like command. Then rent the pause back to them with interest. The choir jolted at her voice like common sense had just kicked the hymn in the shin. A.P. Aladdin on the mouthpiece's flank tilted his head at me. "You took the curse backlash yourself," he said, curiosity and something like respect. "Why?" "Because I could," I said. "Because she shouldn't have to." He nodded once, a soldier recognizing a kind of math, then straightened into line with the wrong people again. "Everyone is built out of contradictions. It makes victory messy." "Enough," Leoric said, voice formal and ragged. "This is a Kira district. Kira protects its own. I am authorizing transfer of all branded citizens in this parish to Magic Knight custody for deconditioning." He aid authorizing like it cost more than blood. The mouthpiece assessed the curve of the room and found the cliff edge. He stepped back and made it look like a bow. "We only want their peace," he said, like a man promising to return with better paperwork. "Then stop trying to buy it," I muttered. They withdrew, not because we scared them, but because their story needed a better scene. The hymn faded without an audience to applaud it. The rain outside decided to try being gentle for 5 seconds. We moved fast without shouting about it. Bulls to triage, dawn to doorways, parishioners to benches with blankets and warm drinks. Luck found kids and started showing them how to make coin disappear into somebody else's pocket and back again. Laughter cut the leftover ritual in half. Celia sat And the front step of the nave under the cracked overhang, rain misting her hair, one hand in Leoric's and the other clutching a cup she wasn't drinking. She looked at me like I had taken something and not apologized enough. "Say you're sorry," she said. "I'm sorry," I said, meaning it, not for the cut, but for the way the world had forced the choice. She nodded once, like a judge who knows the law is stupid and enforces it anyway. "Do it for the others," she said, "a dare and a request. All of them. Don't make me special because I'm his sister." "I won't," I said. "And don't do it alone," she added, turning my own habit into a command. "The way you shook, you think we didn't see." Noelle, behind me, made a small noise without vowels. I didn't look at her. I didn't have to. "I hear you," I said. "I'll try to be smart." "Try harder," Noelle said, stepping in, eyes sharp and wet, furious in that way that ends in honesty, not a scene. "You didn't even look at me before you." "I did," I said. "I knew you'd be there." "That's not the point," she said. "The point is let me carry it with you. Stop making it a hero thing." The fifth book hummed in my hand like a reprimand. The third warmed like agreement. I opened my palm. She put her hand in it. We didn't do speeches. We just let the link settle until our pulses staggered into sync and then found their own rhythm. "Fine," I said. "Yell at me again if I forget." "I will," she promised. Leoric watched us like a man who didn't have the energy to be annoyed that it was happening and was, against his will, relieved. He looked down at Celia. She looked up at him. "You're mad," she said. "Correct," he said. "And grateful." She wiped her cheeks with the heel of her hand like she refused to admit to crying and tugged him forward by his sleeve to press her forehead to his collarbone. He let his chin rest on her hair the way he probably had when she was 5 and he was 8 and he didn't want anyone to know he had a heart. The storm settled into that tired buzz cities make after someone tries to rewrite them. The priest snored. The choir breathed. The bulls made soup like savages. Celia's head tipped against Leoric's shoulder. Her lashes fluttered. She fell into the kind of sleep your brain sells you when it doesn't know how else to reboot. She murmured. I bent down. Leoric leaned his ear. Noelle's hand tightened in mine. The word came out of Celia's mouth wrapped in dream gauze and dirt. Fourth sanctum, she breathed. Under the Kira archives. Deeper, ladder shaft behind the ledger wall. Leoric's eyes went flat. Of course, he said. Polite in the way a blade is polite. I rubbed my sternum until the ache from ruin shifted from hornets to bees. We poked the top floor, I said. We didn't flip the bookcase. We do it tonight, Magna asked, appearing with a ladle like a scepter. No, Noelle said, which stunned him so much he didn't crack a joke. We triage. We escort everyone we cut to people who won't brand them again. We sleep 2 hours. We hit the archives at dark. Leoric nodded once. And then, he said, watching the rain, listening to the city like it was trying to clear its throat, sanctum prime at dawn. We didn't need to answer. The answer hung between us, heavy as our coats, simple as breath. I looked back at the nave. The choir, unhooked, shivered and found each other. A woman in her 50s patted a man's shoulder. A kid in the front pew remembered a joke and mangled the punchline and the people around him laughed anyway just to give him the sound of it. Ia slept like a person who had decided to keep her edges even if they cut her on bad days. Leoric held his sister and stared at a future he hadn't wanted and was going to choose anyway. Noelle squeezed my fingers and didn't let go when someone called her to help, dragging me into motion with her because that's how you move forward without falling over. We got up and worked, simple, fast, one thing after another. At some point, Yami appeared in the doorway, rain steaming off his cloak. He took in the cut circle at Celia's neck, the priest's bandaged wrists, the way my shirt stuck to my chest. Like I'd been in a fight with lightning and a compromise, the bulls turning a church into a field hospital with bad manners and good hands. He lit a cigarette, frowned at the ceiling leak, and flicked ash into the rain instead of onto holy floorboards. You good? He asked me. Define good, I said. It came out like a joke. It wasn't. He squinted at my books until he found the one that was sulking and the one that was playing nice. You added an ugly one, he observed, nodding at Leaf V. Yeah, keep it on a leash. I will. He studied the room again. His mouth flattened into Somethi. That looked almost like reverence and almost like irritation. Proud of you, kid, he said, so casual he could deny it later. Don't make me say it again. Copy, I said, because my throat was busy. He rolled his shoulder like the building annoyed him and vanished back into the rain to go commit paperwork by scaring it into signing itself. By Dawn's first suggestion, the parish had stopped smelling like fear and started smelling like soup and wet wool. The circles on people's necks looked duller, less eager. The hymn tried to creep under the door twice and got bored when it found us awake. We bedded down a handful in the bull's carts. We gave the choir blankets and bad jokes. We promised nothing we couldn't deliver and then tried to deliver more anyway. Celia woke just before the sky decided to try blue again. She reached up, touched her neck, and didn't flinch. She looked at me and rolled her eyes like a sister. You look like hammered bread. Rude, I said. True, she said, and smiled tiny. Thank you. Leoric squeezed her hand once. Stay with the bulls, he told her. Tell Charmy if anyone tries to draw on you. Celia glanced past him to where Charmy was asleep standing up with a loaf as a pillow and nodded solemnly. I will, she said. We stepped out into the street that hated sleep, shoulders skimming. Leoric adjusted his ruined coat like it mattered less than it used to. Noelle tugged her hair into something that would hold for exactly one fight. I flexed my fingers until the hornets turned into the kind of ache that reminds you your body noticed what you did for it. I looked at the 7 books. Leaf I hovered obedient. 2 buzzed with 100 paths. 3 laced into Noelle without asking. IV sulked like it wanted more angles. V waited for me to slip. V pulsed patiently. A heartbeat promising to lend itself when we asked right. 7 stayed shut, like a mouth that only opens when the room is ready to hear. Archives, I said. Archives, Leoric agreed. Noelle tapped my knuckles. You say, together, this time, she said, mock stern. Together, I said, and felt the word take. We walked. The city led us. Chapter 3 end. Chapter 4. The Kira Ledger and the Flood. We hit House Kira's archives at stupid o'clock and skipped the front desk. Leoric led, coat mended badly, jaw set perfectly. Noelle and I flanked him like bad ideas with paperwork. 2 bulls ghosted the hall behind us carrying a rolled rug that was actually Magna with snacks, don't ask. Leoric walked right to the ledger wall Celia had muttered about and didn't pretend he wasn't about to commit treason against his own house. Watch the corners, he said, because that's what captains say when they're pretending their heart isn't climbing a ladder already. Corners watched, I answered. The 2nd book laid a thin line from my palm to the floor seam, to the hinge nobody thought was a hinge, to Noelle's wrist. She made a low sweep with water so clean it didn't drip. The seam sighed. A hidden latch winked like an apology. Leoric set his hand flat on the carved crest. Celia, he said under his breath, like a key word. He pressed. The wall thunked with the guilt of a door that's been locked for years. We went through. The ladder shaft was narrow and mean. It dropped into a glow that wasn't a torch and wasn't friendly. Noelle hooked a thread to my belt and we climbed in sync so we didn't step on each other. Leoric moved like a man counting his regrets by rungs. We hit stone. The room looked like a vault had married a library and the kids came out judgmental. Ledgers lay open on pedestals that turned to face you. Shelves drifted, slow and alive. Some pages wrote themselves when you looked away, then froze when you stared. Leoric approached the center slab and didn't touch it. The cover bore the Kira crest and a circle nested inside a clover. He exhaled through his nose. My house did the funding. Noelle skimmed a ledger with 2 fingers and a frown. The ink tried to hide under her shadow. She tilted her hand and the words had to pick a side. They laundered donations through 6 charities and a church roof. Cute. I put a palm on the stone table. It hummed at a frequency that made my teeth feel like they were trying to tell me gossip. The 4th grimoire felt close, like a choice about angles. Pulled lines between sanctums, I said. 7 places. When they sing together, it isn't music. Leoric's profile hardened. Tuning forks for a rewrite. Yeah, we didn't get to read a full paragraph before the ceiling above us start. D announcing visitors the old-fashioned way, boots and arguments. A seal upstairs clicked back into place. A bell rope jerked. So your uncle ratted, Noelle said. Of course he did, Leoric said, see. In that way that means someone is very not calm. A bar slid across the vault door we'd come through. Another bar we couldn't see did that deep house thud that says, "You live outside now." The room took a breath and tensed like a fist. "Exit?" I asked. Noel pointed at the far wall. "Vent grill. Bad idea. Smaller than Gosha's patience. Love a bad idea." I slung a thread across the room to test the gap. It came back with dust and an attitude. The main door rolled open not to help but to make a point. 10 golden dawn knights stood in formation, light meat on their shoulders. Their C.A. Tane, the straight blade from yesterday, took one careful step into the sanctum. "This area is sealed." Leoric didn't move away from the ledger. "By who?" "By me," said a voice behind the formation. His uncle walked in like a man who thinks a real apology is a well-made tea. "Leoric, please step away from the family's contracts." Noel's eyebrows did a whole sentence. I didn't translate. Leoric turned slowly. "You signed my sister into a pilot choir. It's an opportunity," the uncle said, warm as poison. "She is safe and useful and—" "Stop." Leoric didn't raise his voice. He cut the word in half. "Release the ledgers to Magic Knight custody." The uncle smiled the way nobles do when they're about to test how much process can delay a problem. "That requires authorization," Leoric finished. He drew his sun-lined short blade. "I am authorizing it." The air in the room changed. The captain weighed chains he couldn't see. He looked at Leoric, at me, at the books orbiting just off my shoulder. At the sanctum table still humming. He gave a tiny nod like a man picking the least stupid fire. "Don, stand down one pace," he said. The uncle's smile cracked. "Captain," he warned. "Sir," the captain said without looking back, "I will not trap a magic knight in a vault while civilians drown." The uncle recovered the expression people put on when they remember they're rich. "No one is drowning." Then the floor hummed wrong. Not the sanctum stones. The city. Pressure pushed through the mortar, through the air ducts, up the ladder, under our feet. Water didn't rush, it rose. Far-off bells did a ripple of notes that made the hair on my arms react before my brain did. Noelle looked at the ceiling like she could see through it. "Harbor." Leoric snapped his blade up. "Open the door," he told the captain. "Already open," the captain said, stepping aside. "Go." The uncle reached for the table. I slapped a guard wedge between his hand and the ledger so fast his ring clicked off the light. "No," I said. "Confiscated. It belongs to House Kira," he said, furious elegance. Leoric didn't shout. He reached in, lifted the ledger like it weighed as much as it deserved, and tucked it under his arm. "House Kira belongs to its people," he said, and that was him walking away from an entire childhood in one sentence. We moved. Dawn Knights flanked us without committing treason on paper. The bulls up top had already started yelling marathon orders, tiny, loud, endless. We hit the street at a jog and it hit back with salt air and a sound I never want to hear again, a hymn braided into a flood. We ran. The harbor district looked wrong in a slow way. Water curled down lanes that never see high tide. People didn't panic. They smiled like the wind finally liked them. The hymn hung under the eaves. The tide stood up straighter than water should and leaned. "Split," I yelled. "Dawn to the north bridge. Bulls on the high stairs. Lock the alleys." Leoric. "Locks and cranes." He didn't argue. He sprinted for the lock house, cloak snapping, voice cutting orders clear enough to hang lanterns on. Knights peeled toward him because certainty is a magnet. Noelle and I took the front. Leaf 2 threads snapped from my fingers to pilings and handrails and the ribs of the city. She felt them click and threaded her water around the lines like she'd been doing it for years. The flood pushed. We pushed back. A fisherman stared into the water the way you look at something that finally makes sense. The circle on his neck glowed. He stepped down the ramp. "Hey," I shouted, throwing a tether to the memory of his wife's laugh. He'd told me a joke while we triaged at the church. I wasn't above using it. What was her punchline? He blinked like I'd splashed him. "She said the goat looked better in my hat." "Yeah, it did." I yanked. He stumbled backward into Noelle's arm and grabbed the rail like it was the only honest thing in town. "Keep them talking," Noelle yelled to anyone with a mouth. "Recipes. Lies. Somebody sing off key." A dockworker bellowed the wrong lyrics to a sea shanty. A kid let rip the entire alphabet out of order. A woman swore a blue poem that made 3 boats blush. The hymn didn't like the noise. Good. The flood climbed anyway, patient and sure. My guard held at shin height, then knee, then thigh. The second book hummed hot, threads stretching. I needed edges. The fourth grimoire slid close and asked one question. Do you commit to the angle? Yes. Leaf IV opened with a click in my head. Probability didn't bow. It tilted, a degree here, 2 there, enough to make a falling beam miss someone's spine, enough to make a boot land on stone not slime, enough to make Leoric's hand grab the right lever first try. New trick, Noelle asked without looking. Lucky guess, I said, feeling micro choices align like a zipper. I nudged the city's geometry. Nail heads, gutter lips, the curve of a wet rope, and the world gave me little wins for free. Asta arrived like a bad idea you're glad you had. He surfed a railing with a black sword that made the flood hate itself. I brought. No, he shouted, pure sunshine. I brought thread. I shot a line to his blade and dragged its negation through a cluster of circles without touching skin. Sigils fizzled. Men gagged on the cough of freedom. Anti-magic tether. Confirmed. Yo, that's sick. Asta howled, laughing, and sprinted into more water that immediately hated him also. Yuno came from above, calm, precise, star lines pinning wicked eddies like needles in a map. Anchor, he asked, already tracing a constellation across the canal. Anchor, I confirmed. I latched threads to his stars, to Noelle's current, to my guard, and to a crane Leoric had just bullied into life. I didn't think. I conducted. 3, I said. 2, pull. Noelle's sea dragon head tore across the top of my low guard like a battering ram. My shield took the first pressure, her current did the lift, Yuno's stars fixed the edges. And the flood skidded sideways into an empty storage lane instead of into a tenement. Dragon ram. Live. Someone in a window screamed, then realized they were screaming for joy, not drowning. And laughed like a pirate. The hymn tried for the bridges again. Dawn Knights set shields and knees. Leoric, hair in his eyes, snapped orders that sounded like polite insults and worked like levers. Hold 3, he shouted. You. Rope. Now. He jumped down, cut a line clean, and took a shoulder from a man twice his size without collapsing because the 6th book finally stopped waiting. Leaf V flared open in my ribs and dumped stamina into the network like a medic tossing water bottles. My legs went hollow and useful. Everyone else got a sliver of overclock, 1C. Lean action they couldn't have made a second ago. The network got smart. It took energy where I had it and shoved it to who needed it. A woman 3 alleys over felt like she could lift her kid more than once. She did. A guard on a ladder didn't fall when the rung snapped. A cat made it to a roof and then pretended it had meant to do that all along. You're white as a sheet, Noelle said, dragging a hand across her mouth. Eyes on the next wave. Sharing is caring, I said, breathing through a stitch. I'm good. Define good, she shot back, which was fair. Lucius didn't show up with a choir. He used the water like a stage. Light bent on the surface, and his image walked down the first wave that wasn't a wave like it belonged to him. He looked at the camera we didn't have. He smiled at a crowd the city made for him. Friends, he said, voice ringing from somewhere you couldn't hit. You're afraid. Let me help. He didn't push. He offered. The flood leaned in. Drown him out, Leoric barked. Now, we answered with the messiest sound we own. Our own. Sailors screaming. Kids reciting numbers wrong, an old woman arguing with a dog. Noelle laughed once, out of nowhere, then swore. I made myself breathe with her. Not fancy, just human. A warehouse chain snapped. A crate swung. The angle was wrong. Leaf IV hissed a warning and I kicked my guard 2 degrees left. The crate SSED a man's head by a whisper and dented a wall that deserved it more. Keep going, I yelled. The flood gave an inch, took 2, tested the edges of us for a seam. I kept finding fractions and stealing them back. Leoric hit the lock gear and then grabbed a Dawn Knight by the shoulder. You, he said, I need your line on the west boom. The knight, same captain, ran. Leoric's uncle, hatless now, slid down a stair to warn him about some clause in some ledger that kept moving the wrong direction and Leoric, smiling white, said, Uncle, if you say policy to me while my city drowns, I will make policy out of your desk. I almost liked him. The flood peaked. The him shoved. We shoved back harder with worse rhythm and more heart. Asta carved a channel out of a lie. Yuno nailed the corners of an idea to a roof. Noel. God. Noel. Rode the line between over each and perfect, water answering her like it owed her rent. Now, I yelled, pulling threads so tight my hands shook. Push. The harbor exhaled. The tide slumped into being water again. People stumbled and remembered gravity. Someone cheered. It turned into 100 someones. The hymn tried to pretend it had always been our song and failed. I let go and almost sat down on my own knees. Noel's hand found the back of my neck, quick, firm. Breathe. I did. Air tasted like salt and frying oil and fear that had somewhere to go now. Leoric stood on the lock gate like a king who hated crowns, coat torn, eyes bright and narrow. He scanned the bridges, the alleys, the people. He looked for his sister out of reflex, found she was safe in his head, and went back to counting who else he needed to keep. I felt the fourth book settle into a low hum. The sixth pulsed in time with the city. The fifth, Ruin, sat still and cold in my palm, waiting for a reason I didn't want to give it. Noelle leaned into me just enough to be rude and perfect. You're allowed to smile. I looked at her mouth, still set for work, and did the dumb thing anyway. I kissed her fast. Like a spark, she kissed me back once, quick and precise, then shoved me toward a man who needed help with a cart and pretended nothing had happened. Fine. Work first, replay later. We organized the stupid list. Names, blankets, dry stairs, hot tea, someone to make the yelling useful. Bulls turned a ruin into triage with zero decorum and embarrassing speed. Dawn held the North Bridge like a picture in a book. The city remembered how to be itself. Then Lucius arrived in person because of course he did. He didn't descend. He presented. White cloak, hands open, kindness sharpened to a blade. He waded into a puddle like it was a stage and healed a man's cracked ribs with 2 fingers. He looked at a child's scraped knee and the knee believed him when he said there was no more pain. He thanked the knights for delivering so many hearts to safety, and the cheer he got tasted like sugar and rust. His eyes skimmed us without stopping. Then he stopped anyway. Izuku, he said, with the forgiveness of a man who plans to forgive you for fighting him until you give up and work for him. Well done. Hard pass, I said. He smiled like I was a toddler refusing a nap. The 7th Concord completes at dawn, he told the crowd. Sanctum Prime. He didn't have to say what he wanted us to do. He didn't even have to point. Everyone in pain knew where to go when someone promised no more pain. See you there, I said, too loud, because I want his story to have company. He inclined his head to Julius who had walked up silent as wind. The wizard kin. G's face looked like a man who'd stayed up 4 nights in a row thinking about a math problem and found the wrong answer interesting. Converge on Sanctum Prime, Julius said, simply. He didn't raise his voice. Everyone heard. Now, Lucius gave him a polite bow and left the street like it was beneath him. People watched him go and wanted to follow. I watched everyone who watched and wanted to put them to bed and lock the windows. Yami flicked a cigarette into a puddle, then remembered he was being watched and flicked it somewhere less symbolic. Kid, he said to me, pick your 7th book at the church. You're going to need it. Quote, working on it, I said. Leoric jogged up, one hand still on orders, the other on conscience. The ledgers. On us, I said, tapping my chest. The table's hum was still lodged behind my sternum. They point to the cathedral engine. Of course they do, he said, and did not sigh because he is disciplined and I am not. Noelle peeled hair off her cheek with the back of her hand. Triage set. Bulz'll rotate. Dawn holds the bridge. We go light to prime. Celia, Leoric asked like his heart wasn't dangling over a hook. Charmy is using bread as a weapon against anyone who tries to brand her again, Noelle said. Your sister is safer than the Wizard King. He nodded, relief hitting him in the knees and then bouncing off because standing is a job. He looked at me for a split second. Mouth tightening. You cut that circle out of her. Yeah, you'll do it again for strangers. Not a question. As long as I can. Not alone. He didn't say thank you. He didn't say be careful. He said, good, and it meant both. We grabbed the ledger we'd stolen from the table and the ledger that had stolen my patience and a handful of Bull's 2 dumb tea. Oh live, this is affection, and a handful of Dawn too smart to die and headed for Sanctum Prime. Halfway up the hill, the city breathed like a punched lung and then caught itself. Morning had the nerve to think about happening. The hymn twitched in the gutters. People on balconies decided whether to go to bed or go to a miracle. I looked at my 7 grimoires. Leaf I hovered steady, the friend that shows up with a truck when you move. 2 thrummed with lines I could draw without hands. 3 sat warm in my chest where Noel's hand had been. IV purred like odds I could live with. V waited, patient and cold. V beat with the squad. 7 turned once in the air like a lock turning for the right key. Dawn, Leoric said, voice not asking. We move. Bulls, Yami said, grin like a knife he liked. Wreck responsibly. Noel brushed my shoulder, then fell into step beside me. You say it. Together, I said. We went. Chapter 4 end. Chapter 5. 7th Concord. Sanctum Prime breathed like a machine pretending to be holy. Cathedral bones, engine heart. Choir balconies shaped like tuning forks. Banners that should have been paper felt like screens you could code a religion into. The hymn wasn't playing yet, but you could taste where the sound would go, how it would bounce and settle and sit in chests it didn't own. We came light and loud anyway. Black bulls scattered on instinct. Luck to stairs, Magna to doors. Vanessa to triplines that looked like decoration until you bled on them. Dawn knights slotted into aisles, shields locking, Leoric at their point like a sunrise that had decided to learn swordwork. Noel took the central lane, chin up, hair pinned like it might try to escape and she wouldn't let it. I stayed a half step to her right so our angles had room to breathe. Julius watched from a side gallery with that interested, annoying calm he brings to unsolvable math. Captains appeared in shadows and edges, we were a rumor with uniforms. Lucius stood at the center, palms open. Small smile constant, as if he were hosting a workshop for grief management. Paladins formed a loose circle around him. White cloaks, bare heads, eyes like candlelight reflected in glass. On his left, Celia Kira in choir whites, no circle on her neck anymore, hands folded. She looked like a person in a painting who wanted out. Welcome, Lucius said, genuinely pleased. You're right on time. Noel made a soft, rude sound that I loved. Leoric didn't posture. Celia, he said, come here. Her eyes flicked to him and softened before they remembered they had duties. She took a breath like a person on a cliff who knows the view and hates the fall. I'm here, she said, and stayed put. Honest. Wrong. Lucius didn't touch her. He didn't have to. The 7th Concord completes when the bells mark dawn. He told the room, quietly. We will end the curse of waking up and choosing. You don't have to keep doing this to yourselves. I wanted to hate him for how good that sounded and couldn't. So I picked the part one could beat. Everyone who wants to leave, I called. Big, clean, no lecture, go now. No one stops you. The cathedral noticed that sentence like a dog on a new noise. A few paladins glanced at doors. One took a step and then froze, remembering he wasn't allowed to think about steps that didn't line up with doctrine. People in the side aisles shifted like chairs on a ship. Lucius smiled, amused, unbothered. Your offer is very kind. It assumes they understand the weight they're carrying. He nodded toward the rafters. Bells breathed. The hymn lifted like a tide. Threads wanted out of my hands before I told them to. I let Leaf 2 draw first lines. Few corners, pillar braces, the edge of Noel's bracer, Leoric's sleeve stitching, Yuno's star slick. Air current whispering from somewhere above. Asta thunked a sword on a bench to get attention and grinned, feral and friendly. On your call, Noel said. On my call, I echoed, and the third book warmed between us without needing a light show. The floor hummed bad. The banners stirred like lungs. Lucius lifted one hand. Begin. The sanctum woke. The choir didn't sing with mouths, the bewail. Ding sang with choices we'd given up and didn't know we had. A low tone pressed on kneecaps and made people want to kneel. A high harmony threaded behind language and told you that your pain came from insisting on being separate. The first line of paladins moved, not fast, not slow, inviting. Shields up like open doors, the kind you don't notice you're walking through until you look back and the hall behind you is gone. Hold bridges. Leoric snapped. Dawn Knights planted feet. He sketched sun lines across gaps, thin and exact, making lanes nobody else saw until they were standing on them. I pushed low. Leaf I guard at shin height to trip the sanctum's kneel command without punching ankles. The pressure thudded against my shield instead of sticking in people's bones. Stand, I said, firm and bored. The word got into knees like a better idea. Noel's wave braided over my guard, not a wall but a moving hand, turning bodies lightly, inviting them toward exits or into side aisles where bulls had set up idiot simple kindnesses, blankets, water skins, charm me with bread like a saint who'd given up subtlety. People who weren't here to fight slipped out in ones and then threes and then. In a quiet river of, I thought I had to stay, guess I don't. Lucius didn't look bothered. He watched like a teacher whose favorite students were making expected mistakes. The sanctum harmonizes will, he said. We are helping. Then we're out singing you, I said, and meant it. The second book's thread stretched to balconies, caught a rail, yanked a paladin off an ideal angle so Noel's CU. Rent only had to nudge him into a pillar. He looked surprised to find gravity still worked. Paladins in the center angled to me. The first swung. I snapped a guard wedge to his wrist, not to break. Just to redirect and make him choose something himself. He missed me and hit the sanctum's floor field, which throbbed and tried to persuade him to be nice. He hesitated. I tripped him. He sat down hard, annoyed, very much alive. The hymn surged. Something under the dais turned on, deep and hungry. Leaves 2 and IV hummed together, angles opened, edges changed. Yuno's starline flashed overhead and pinned a chunk of song to the ceiling like a moth. Anchor, he called. Anchor, I confirmed, and wrapped his constellation with thread so my guard had somewhere to attach. Noel saw the line the way she sees everything that wants to be useful and poured a narrow, sharp stream down it. The building tried to bend us into agreement, we bent it first. Lucius finally looked at me directly. That smile didn't wobble. You were very good at triage, he said. Let me give you scale. He raised both hands. Time buckled. The choir's note became one continuous breath. Dust hung mid-fall like it had to ask permission before landing. The sanctum's core sang along, low vowel that made my molars feel like they were thinking about hatching. I moved and didn't. My foot touched the floor across 2 heartbeats that were the same heartbeat. Noel's eyes tracked me like she refused to accept the rules. Leoric's blade started to lift and never finished. Anti-magic, I shouted, or tried. Sound stretched. Asta heard anyway. He tore into the center with that black sword and hacked a line through the slowed air. Time around the blade snapped back to honest. He grinned. No, thanks, I said, maybe 3 seconds ago or later. We pivoted around his cut. I hit hard, fast, guard wedge to paladin ribs, thread whip to his ankle, hope line to a pillar, shove, clean takedown, no sermon. Noel's weight. R came behind and iced the floor under 3 more pairs of 2 sure feet. They sat without grace and glared up at being human. Lucius walked through it, literally stepping around speed like it bored him. His hand went up. The floor under my shoes skated. The sanctum wanted to slide me into a gentle funnel that ended at his feet with a nice little kneel. I should have gone. Leaf IV twitched. I adjusted one toe by 2 degrees. Barely anything. The world's vector missed me by exactly the room it needed to miss me. I stumbled into my own guard instead of into his smile. Embarrassing. Useful. Lucius's expression said, see, you could be doing this without sweat. Offer still stands, he murmured, phone voice, just for me. I give you a uniform, you keep doing exactly this, and you stop waking. Up at 3 in the morning remembering who you didn't save. Hard pass, I said again, and my voice didn't shake. He opened his palm. The central dais answered. A ring of glyphs spun up around him. With a slow mercy that made me want to weep and punch him simultaneously. The rewrite field finally woke fully, like a storm deciding to be a climate. Julius's voice drifted from the gallery, cheerful, unhelpful, fascinating. Wizard King, I yelled, please be less fascinated and more useful. He laughed. I am being useful. I'm not stopping you. Typical. The sanctum pushed hard. People with circles brightened. People without circles blinked and softened. A Dawn Knight next to Leoric lowered his shield an inch because the floor said he wanted to. Leoric slammed the rim of his own shield into the knight's edge, jarring him back to anger. Eyes, Leoric said. On me. His voice brought men back like a spine. Celia stepped forward. She didn't glow. She didn't float. She just walked to where the hymn could hear her best. Stop, she told Lucius, voice small and firm. You promised me peace. This is theft. You are very brave, he said, fond, not angry. It's exhausting. Come back. I'll let you sleep. He didn't look at Leoric when he said it, which is how you hurt a brother with your mouth. Celia's hands trembled. She didn't move. The dais' glyphs widened. Circles within clover within circles, a logic spiral. The building pulled will like a pump. Paladins leaned easier. The crowd at the doors turned back, half caught. We didn't have time for noble debates. We needed a cut the sanctum couldn't heal around. A contradiction it couldn't swallow. Fuse it, I said, already turning. Anti-magic and blessing. Asta blinked at me. Blessing. Borrow mine, Noelle said. Forcing her water to be not a weapon but a gift, the precise opposite of Asta's sword, tides shaped as shelter, not shove. Water lifted around her palms in a bowl and didn't spill, refusal to drown. We shouldn't be able to put those in the same sentence. The sanctum's math relied on that impossibility. Do it, I said, and the seventh book, that quiet, stubborn lock, turned. No flare, no choir, just a click where my ribs lived. The feeling of a door opening into a room we were already in. Leaf 7. Concord. Settled in my chest and then out into the threads. A sigil drew itself in light between us without me thinking it. Not a circle that closes. A shape with a seam on purpose. Anti-magic at one edge, Noelle's blessing water at the other, my guard around both to stop them flying apart, Yuno's starline stitching the top. Leoric's sun line lancing the bottom into an anchor. The mark hung in the air, less a symbol than a rule. Different doesn't mean wrong, different means song. Now, I breathed. Asta brought the sword down through the sigil, Noelle poured her bowl into the cut. Instead of annihilating each other, the two magics jolted, argued, and then, because the sigil said so, sang. The blade carried a anti-magic current sheathed in mercy, the water carried a blessing that refused to erase choice. They fused at the seam and moved like one thing. Paradox fuse. Online. We shoved the fused wave across the dais edge. The sanctum's rewrite field bucked. For a second it looked like static across glass, then like glass deciding to be sand again. The fusion didn't break people. It broke the engine's assumption. Lucius's smile narrowed. Interesting. He stepped and wasn't where he'd been. Time hiccuped. He reached me across 3 wrong steps and put 2 fingers against my sternum. The world pulled thin. The air around me went syrup thick. I could see Noelle's mouth shape my name at the same speed a mountain grows. Time stop. Personal. Surgical. He leaned close. Leaders are bottlenecks, he said pleasantly. If I remove you for a minute, I free your friends from your need to conduct. He sounded like a man moving a vase because the shelf looked crowded. I couldn't move. I could think, which was almost worse. A cage with all the lights on. He turned toward the others, bare palm out, ready to escort them back into the nice quiet while I watched. A hand grab, bed my wrist and yanked me 1 inch back into now. Celia, face strained, eyes full, dragging me with both hands like she was pulling a rope attached to something bigger than either of us. Her blessing wasn't gone, it was hers now. She used it like a pry bar, not a leash. The sanctum hated her for it. Lucius's head snapped toward her, surprise finally breaking his perfect. Enough, she said through shaking teeth, and hauled again. The second I could breathe, I grabbed her arm, folded her behind my shoulder, and threw a guard in front of her like habit. Thank you, I said, whined back in my chest like a gift. Leoric barked something wordless and relieved and furious all at once. He cut 3 sun lines in one gesture and made a bright box around his sister that a paladin bounced off with. A noise like a tuning fork who'd met sarcasm. Lucius didn't flinch. He simply pivoted, time slow still bleeding from his fingers, and reached for Noelle next. Don't touch her, I said, and my voice hit the room raw. He did anyway, so I did the stupid, honest thing I am very good at. I paid. The Concord sigil flared and a second symbol spun out under my boots, a circle that wasn't a circle, a share, not a siphon. Concord shunt. The price the building wanted for freedom, fatigue, pain, the nausea of fighting your own need to rest. I grabbed it and shoved it across every thread I had. Not dumping on strangers, sharing. Bulls, Dawn, Captains, me, Asta and that cranky vendor from last night I'd accidentally left a thread on when I told him to keep the tea hot. Everyone took a strand of what I had been hogging. I staggered without falling. Noelle's shoulders hitched and then straightened like she'd just remembered a weight from training. Asta barked a laugh because he thinks discomfort is a sport. Yuno's eyebrow flicked, which for him is a scream. Leoric accepted the shunt-like duty and didn't look away from the front. The field slipped. Concord had changed the who from me to us. The engine couldn't grab one neck and make the rest kneel. Push, I yelled. Asta cut. No, across the central glyphs. Noelle slammed a cresting wave of blessing water into the cut, and because Sigil said they were allowed to be friends, the two magics turned the sanctum's rewrite into steam. Yuno stapled the steam to the rafters in tidy star patterns that dripped back down as harmless rain. Leoric drove a sun line through the dais' keystone and locked it to the floor so the whole thing stopped floating emotionally. Paladins faltered. The ones who were mostly doctrine sat down and blinked. The ones who were mostly themselves took swings at us and found they didn't want to. A few started helping people up instead of pushing them down. I didn't judge. You don't punish someone for waking up 5 seconds late to the world. Lucius finally, lost the smile. His mouth was still soft, but the eyes went clinical. You've made a better machine, he said. Congratulations. Not a machine, I said, stepping to keep him in my angles. A chorus. He tilted his head like a conductor thinking about a bridge. Choruses go flat. You'll come find me when they do. Maybe, I said, because I refuse to pretend life is simpler than it is. But it won't be today. He put his hands behind his back. We moved to cage him without being obvious about it. Dawn to the left, Bull's right, Captain's overlapping shadows. Julius humming because he's annoying. The sanctum's hum went from hungry to hollow. The engine tone spun down like a mill after the river went home. Lucius looked at Julius. Arrest me, he said. Polite as a petition. Julius blinked like a cat at a string. All right, he said. He made it official with almost insulting neatness. Shackles that were more ritual than metal. Clauses spoken for lawyers who would get a headache. Lucius offered his wrists and did not bow. As they started him out, Celia stepped forward and said, to his face, you used me. No drama. Just a sentence a person should have to hear. He dipped his head like a man accepting a compliment he didn't deserve. I offered you rest. He glanced back at me. He offered you work. She didn't hesitate. I'll take work. He smiled again. Soft, patient. We'll speak again when you are tired. Then he walked into custody like a man late for a very calm meal. The building exhaled. The hymn guttered out like a candle in a rational room. The dawn bells, the real ones, not part of any engine, finally rang. People in the aisles covered their ears and grinned. I tried to straighten and discovered a very long, detailed list of muscles filing complaints. My legs had opinions. My chest had bees. My head felt like a drawer full of forks. I leaned into a pillar until it felt like a person. Noelle banged her shoulder into mine. Breath fogging just a little in the cool. Dumb, she said, affection weaponized, sharing that much at once. Loved your wave, I said, and then I laughed because there was nothing else for it. She laughed too, bright and mean and kind, and then we both got pulled into the job. Moving people, cutting sigils, making sure nobody slipped and made a polite accident. Halfway through, a dawn knight I didn't know shoved a pastry in my hand and said, very sincerely, I like the part where you made the weight smaller by dividing it. Then he went back to yelling. Gee at an aisle like it had offended his mother. Julius drifted by, giddy with puzzles. The sigil you drew, he said. Fascinating work. Permission to. Later, Noelle said, perfectly polite, and Julius behaved. A squad of engineers in city gray arrived with measuring tools and expressions like grim marriages. They cleared the dais, lifted a panel, and peered into Sanctum Prime's throat. One whistled low. Huh. I limped over. Huh what? The stone, he said, tapping the empty recess. This should have had a focus lodged. 6 sanctums cracked, 7th should have sat here. It's gone. Lucius took it. I asked. The engineer shook his head. Not today. There's dust on the mount from before last night. Somebody removed this carefully, cleanly, and not with Saint toys. Different tooling. Leoric joined us, coat torn to democracy, eyes tired and clear. So someone else wanted control and didn't trust Lucius with the final key. He didn't make it a threat. He made it a note for an already crowded ledger. Julius, I called up. He leaned over a rail like a child at a puppet show. Yes, weird missing rock. I see it, he said, entirely too cheerful. We'll audit. Please hydrate. Mother, I muttered. Noel shoved a water skin into my palm before I could be more annoying. The part after victory is work, too. We wrote names, peeled stickers off necks, told people they could take their pain home and not be ashamed of it. Bowles stole a bakery cart from a vendor who cried and then laughed and took coin and also another coin he pretended not to see, and we shoved rolls into anyone who could chew. Charmy ran triage like a war goddess made of carbs. Celia found me while the crews deactivated the last of the choir rigs. She looked smaller without the building trying to be her spine. Also bigger. That contradiction sat fine on her. You shake less when you share it, she said. Yeah, share it more, she said. Don't make Leoric watch you die creatively. Noted, I said. She considered my face like she was measuring me for an inconvenient future. Also, I'm joining your mess. Leoric, who'd arrived just in time to hear, pinched the bridge of his nose. Celia, brother, she said, sweet as murder, I'll be with Bull's support until the wizards sign a piece of paper that makes you less likely to combust. I'm not going back to a hymn. I'm not going back to your house. I am going forward. Quote, he tried not to smile and failed like a human. Charmy will recruit you with food. Good, she said, I'm starving. Asta barreled up, slammed me in a hug. That felt like being hit by a friendly boulder. You made my sword be nice. You made. No, hug people, I said. We're even. He laughed, loud, glorious. Yuno nodded once from 10 feet away, which is the Yuno equivalent of dancing on a table. We did the boring hero thing. Statements, logistics, making sure the arrested were actually arrested and not redirected, paperwork bullied into existence by Yami's stare. The city did the better hero thing. Cleaning, arguing, checking neighbors, bragging about who yelled the funniest under pressure. By late morning, Bowles and Dawn had the sanctum quiet, the choir deprogrammed. And the paladins either back in their own heads or asleep. Julius slipped by me and murmured, he'll try again one day. I know, I said, no drama. We'll be here. He patted my shoulder like a man who collects rare books and had just added another to a shelf only he could see. Eat, he said, and vanished to go be everywhere. Noelle finally let herself sit on a step. I sat beside her. We didn't say anything for a while. The city hummed its better noise. Market sellers, bad jokes, argument, the clatter of normal. She nudged my knee with hers. You okay? Define okay, I said, on reflex. She stared until my mouth learned a better line. I'm good, I corrected, because I was tired, angry, relieved, and weirdly happy to be all of that with people instead of as some tragic personal brand. Good, she said, satisfied like a cat successfully training a human. She slid her hand into mine and left it there where everyone could see. No speeches, just a choice. Leoric walked up with his coat finally off and his sleeves rolled as if he were about to build his own lockhouse. He looked at our hands and pretended to examine the ceiling instead. We have a lot of ledgers to burn, he said. Scan, I said. Pardon. Burn the system, I said, but scan the pages first. We're going to need addresses more than we need bonfires. He gave me a look that I'd scored a point I didn't know we were keeping track of. Agreed, he said, then added, glancing at Noelle, he learns. Slowly, she said, but her thumb moved once on my knuckles, absent and warm. A kid ran by wearing a bakery cart chestplate, yelling, I'm a paladin of pastries, and almost tripped over Luck, who was teaching 3 dock hands how to cheat at dice, for morale. Vanessa Street, Ole a banner and turned it into a sling for baguettes. Charmy declared a feast and made it real by force of will. I stood up too fast and the world edged, then righted. Noelle caught my wrist without comment. The 7th book hovered closer than the others, quiet as a heartbeat with an idea. Hey, I said, we keep choosing each other, I said, the line from the outline in my head getting to be a life instead of a plan. Every fight, she said, like an oath you can eat. The 7 grimoires orbited, 6 open, 1, concord, opening and closing with my breath, not locking, just resting. Ready to take the next ugly, beautiful choice and make it ours. The city didn't become perfect. It got louder in the right places. That was enough for today. We walked back into the noise we'd saved to make sure it could save itself tomorrow. Chapter 5 End.